Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be sitting here with Andy Polansky, who's the CEO of IPG DXTRA. Unfortunately, I'm not actually sitting with him, of course. He is thousands of miles away from me in the USA, and I'm in Hong Kong. And many of you will be watching this in India, but this is the way we live these days. But welcome, Andy, to Spectra. I think this is your first appearance at this event.
It is indeed, Arun. Nice to see you and nice to be with everyone. And to your point, wish it was live, but let's hope at some point in the not too distant future we can do that.
Yeah, hopefully soon. So we're here to have a chat, I guess, about leading through change, which I think is such a good way of describing one of the most salient business challenges I feel from the last 18 months. Obviously, so much has changed. Many things have accelerated. Expectations have shifted. Of course, we can't ignore the context for all of this is COVID-19, for one, the pandemic, and two, a rise in social movements and so forth. And we'll talk through many of those issues here today. But let me start, Andy, by asking you, leading through change is something that leaders are expected to do, but could anyone truly have expected to have been ready to lead through the challenges of the past 18 months?
Well, certainly not. I mean, there's, as I think many people have referenced, there's no playbook for this type of pandemic, which, we should acknowledge is still raging throughout the world. And I certainly hope everybody in the audience and friends and family are safe and well. So that, the challenging time, it's not like we're through the challenging time. I think it's going to be with us as we go forward. But I think we've all learned a lot. I'm extraordinarily proud of our teams and how they've adapted. Here we are having this conversation in our respective home offices. And, I don't think anyone would have imagined how quickly we needed to adapt, how dramatically. But I think what is striking to me is how our people and this industry more broadly, has supported each other through this period of time, and of course supported our clients as we all go through this together, and all the complexities that come along with it, and all the management challenges that come along with it.
Yeah, it's been quite amazing to see, actually, the kind of mutual support during the past 18 months. How would you say it's changed you as a leader, if at all?
Yeah, it's for many years, as you and other folks who know me would appreciate, my style of leadership management is to travel quite a bit all around the world and visit with our teams, visit with our clients. I probably did that over the last 2 decades, maybe 50-60% of the time. And so to have to flip a switch and do what I do in a completely different way certainly took a change in thought process. But we all of us have done that in our own ways. And it's I to be candid, I miss the human connection, the live connection. Certainly, I've found that using various technology platforms, the most important thing here, of course, is to stay connected, connected to our people, connected to our clients, other stakeholders. And naturally, you can cast a pretty wide net by reaching out in a virtual format. So, I think that's, I still feel very connected, but it is different, and I do look forward to getting back, returning to offices, being with colleagues. We're in as everyone can appreciate, a creative-oriented business. I think there's magic when you have an atmosphere, a collaborative atmosphere, where you have teams sitting in a conference room or wherever it might be, I just think that's a great environment to stimulate great thinking, whether it be strategy or creative.
Mm. So you don't foresee a fully virtual future. Presumably, you are looking at something a little more hybrid. How do you expect that to work?
Well, I mean, to be candid, I think we're all looking very carefully at that. We have a lot of different businesses in my portfolio with different geographic footprints. So, the model might look a little bit different depending on the particular business. But I think in a broad sense, I think that when we talk about how things have changed, certainly employee expectations have changed. I think we were already moving in a direction across our businesses to be a whole lot more flexible as we attract and retain talent, the best talent. But I think that employees are looking for more flexibility, right? So how does that look in relation to the hybrid model? Making sure we do get our people together as appropriate when appropriate. Naturally, everyone's physical and mental well-being is paramount in terms of as a guiding principle in how we think about all this. But I do think things we're going through a pretty dramatic transformation, and I think that things will forever be different, and there will be more flex in the model and in terms of how we do what we do. But I'm very optimistic. I mean, I think, you learn so much when you go through, focuses the mind, right? When you go through managing turbulent times. And like any situation, and this is certainly unique, but like any situation, there'll be companies that emerge as leaders who have figured out new ways of doing business, new ways of serving their clients, and new ways of supporting their people and creating a vibrant type of atmosphere for them.
Are you finding it difficult at all, or challenging perhaps, to deal with differing expectations? For example, you may have people who are not comfortable coming back into the office at all, and you may have people who want to be in the office all of the time. And of course, you oversee not just one office or one business or one agency, but multiple big global agencies around the world, including Weber Shandwick, Golin, Jack Morton, Optical. There will be a lot of differing expectations amongst your workforce, and certainly compared to previously when it was just accepted, I suppose, that work happened in the office. How do you navigate those different expectations?
Yeah, well, I think that again, public health considerations and what we're hearing from our people. We're naturally talking with our people all the time, doing surveys across our organizations just to have a good close sense of how people are thinking and feeling. And to my earlier point, that varies depending on where you might sit in the world and what your personal circumstances might be, right? And we have a lot of folks naturally that are it's a big balancing act, and people are dealing with childcare issues, elderly care issues, whatever it might be. So those are really important. But I think that there's a lot of focus, and understandably so, on returning to offices and what that might look like. Of course, in some parts of the world, our folks are already in offices and have been in offices for quite some time. But I think this is more about why people stay with companies and what attracts people to companies, and in our particularly in our kind of business. And what's your employer brand? What's your broader philosophy around talent? I think that those are the more important considerations as we look forward. It's what type of culture do we have in our different organizations, and that again is going to drive success. The note how we go about returning to offices, what that hybrid looks like, super important. But I think that we got to stay focused on the macro issue, and how to we all know that this is intellectual capital business, and it's all about our talent. So how do we attract and retain our best talent and create the employer brand and with the values and that we believe in and we want to stand for.
Has it made you rethink your approach to, I suppose, flexibility in the workplace? Or would you maybe classify it more as an acceleration?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were already thinking a lot about a bit more of a flexible model. Wouldn't say we're moving to a dispersed type of workforce in our organizations. Again, we believe in the power of the collaboration that takes place in workspaces. Again, if and when that becomes appropriate again. But look, we're all rethinking how we do what we do, right? And how what's going to be more impactful for clients. What's important to our clients, what's important to our people. We're moving very fast. We've naturally learned that using technology platforms like we are right now. We're in some instances cutting down on commutes or travel that maybe we can get something accomplished without having to do all that, right? So I think it's certainly accelerated and will continue to accelerate. I think it will be a work in progress. We'll continue to learn. We'll continue to listen. We'll continue to be mindful of what's going to result in the best client service model for our clients.
Do you think it opens up the talent market at all, given that there seems to be much more comfort now with people working virtually, not necessarily in the same physical location? Do you think that brings opportunities to your businesses?
Well, I mean, without a doubt, I think that if one looks backward in our business, there was a lot of emphasis on geography and being close to clients. When you talk to clients now, we serve clients naturally all over the world. Our people, I think that the keen interest is, where do we have our subject matter experts? People who have different types of expertise in given areas that can help solve client problems. Those folks may not be in the particular geography, right? So, I think that the world has changed dramatically, and there's much more of an emphasis on, where do we go find the best talent, and it's a little less important, where they may live. But that again is we're just trying to figure all that stuff out as we go through this period.
It's a lot, isn't it? I think how difficult has it been in terms of managing the mental health challenges? Because as you just said, it's a lot that everyone's been having to deal with. There's obviously the challenges at work, but of course also the challenges of living through a global pandemic. I mean, people in India know this better than most, right? How have you been able to address that from a kind of a business perspective? And how important do you see that being, I suppose, in the years to come?
Well, it's going to be the most important issue, right? It's, I think our folks have gone through so much through this period, and again have supported each other in such a meaningful way. But everybody's been confronted with a situation where they might have people very close to them who have gotten very sick, maybe even have passed, and that's incredibly stressful. And empathy, I guess, is the key thing, right? You have to really appreciate that everybody is dealing with the situation in a variety of different ways. But it perhaps as when we emerge from this period and the pandemic effects, I think we've learned a lot there too, right? We know that we want our people to bring their whole selves to work. Everybody's always dealing with a lot of things in their personal lives, and if we're supportive of them and building pathways for their career development, we also have to appreciate what's important to them, in a broader sense, and what's going to make them happy. And I just think it's important to, you've heard me talk about this over the years, is, just listen, just be an active listener and just really be plugged into what's important, not just to our clients, but naturally to our own people as well. And, what matters and what's going to matter as we think about policies and different ways of approaching the hybrid model.
So we'll come on to clients in just a second. Let me ask you first about this idea of the Great Resignation, because it's something we hear a lot about in this part of the world. I wouldn't say we're necessarily seeing it so much here, but certainly the numbers suggest it's happening in the US. People are leaving the workforce, or they're rethinking their careers in terms of maybe different lines of work, maybe leaving big cities for a different lifestyle. Are you seeing that across your businesses?
Well, I mean, certainly we're seeing people, as a period of reflection, right? So naturally, people are thinking about their lives and how that relates to career. I'm very optimistic about this industry. I think, as you know, Arun, I've grown up in the agency business. I think it's just filled with opportunity. I've never felt more strongly about that. So, will certain people make certain decisions in this period of time? And yeah, I think people always do, right? And what's best for them and their personal lives and professional lives. But again, I think if we focus on our employer brand and what the employee experience is like, creating the right conditions for that, I think we can really thrive. And I think, people will continue to be attracted to this profession. I think that, we'll get into this, I'm sure, when we talk about clients, but I think that our profession has never been held in higher regard. And, I see this, I do a lot of work with colleges and universities with students, who aspire for careers in the profession. And, there's so much enthusiasm. And I think people really think they can make a difference in this industry. And I certainly have seen that, believe it strongly. So you're always going to go through different periods. And to your point, maybe the pandemic maybe catalyzed some of that. Some people maybe were never the people I was just describing, right? That they have other interests and maybe want to do something some entrepreneurial path. But when I look at it, I see I'm very optimistic. Like I said, I see a lot of opportunity. If you build the right cultures within your organizations, you're going to attract the best talent. You're going to retain the best talent.
So we will come on to clients in just a second. Just one more question about talent. So we're almost getting to 2 years now when people who you may have hired, maybe at a young age, have never even seen their colleagues and have been working virtually that whole time. I mean, does that worry you at all in terms of the industry's appeal? Because it is an industry that does thrive.
It's one of the reasons, many reasons I'm looking forward to bringing people back to offices, more broadly, when the conditions are right for that. And we're planning for that. To your point, a lot of folks start in this industry have never worked in an office, right? Never. So they don't even, in a sense, know what they're missing, right? They don't know what it's like to be working closely, with people, walking the halls, getting mentored, just the stuff that happens quite organically, just as you're walking around an office in an office environment. So I see that as opportunity as well. I think that once people are back immersed in those settings again, I think that will be energizing, and I think people will see even more possibility. And I think it'll be good for our businesses and good for our people.
Mm. Well, you mentioned it before. I mean, even though it's been a very challenging time, as we know, the public relations industry has been incredibly resilient. I mean, you know the numbers as well as I do, and of course you have access to your own firm's numbers as well. And the recovery this year has been strong. Last year's decline was a lot lower than many people were fearing. We've seen certain areas hold up extremely well: corporate affairs and crisis, healthcare and employee engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of that surprise you?
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, when I look at the public relations sector, it wasn't all that surprising, just given the nature of our counsel, and the kind of advice we provide, whether it's inside the boardroom or whenever companies are managing complexity, and I think that's going to be with us forevermore here. That's an opportunity for our profession. Again, I think we're now held in much higher regard. I don't think that's just a moment in time, right? I think that companies are super focused on all the issues you were talking about, and corporate reputation. How as they manage through this period, all their stakeholder considerations. And even if you look at one thing you didn't touch on is policy, right, and public affairs, and I know that's a growing area in India, for example, as policy expertise is more and more entering the boardroom discussion. That's another area that just look at the intersection between policy, reputation, and marketing. That's fertile terrain for public relations practitioners, have broad expertise. So I see a lot of opportunity. And I think naturally there are certain areas, like you mentioned, employee engagement, what's the future of work? What's the future of the workplace? DEI consulting, ESG, purpose. I mean, there's certainly some areas that have fueled some of the growth and the return to growth in the business. But I've seen it pretty much across the board. As you know, Arun, we have in the IPG DXTRA portfolio, we have event marketing firms, sports marketing firms. Event marketing firms are probably the hardest hit for obvious reasons, right? The immediate shift away from live events. But it just does reinforce the adaptability, the resilience, and just the brain power of our people, right? And doing that pivot immediately to how do you stage virtual events and hybrid events in super compelling ways. And our team at Jack Morton has done a great job with that. Octagon in the sports marketing arena. How do you do activations in more creative ways that integrate virtual and digital type components? And we're doing that across our public relations businesses as well. So it's interesting when I don't think that I wasn't surprised that the business bounced back. But it's also great to see how inventive people can be, how creative, as part of that, develop new revenue streams and new ways of adding value to our client relationships.
And have you seen client requirements, demands changing in a significant manner over the last year?
Well, I would say that in the past year, there was, for perhaps obvious reasons, there was some shift from the marketing-oriented programs when companies weren't in a position to drive as much demand given supply chain issues, whatever it might be, and the focus on corporate corporate issues, just managing all the pandemic-related concerns with stakeholders. So there was a bit of a shift there. Again, it just reinforced the value and the type of counsel that we provide. I think that will continue. Beyond that, I don't know if I saw any sort of discernible shifts, it's been gratifying to see the consistency in the rebound. It's like, sometimes when you see economic recovery, it's driven in pockets, right? Whether they be geography pockets or areas of expertise, and we're pretty much seeing strength across the board, through 2021 here.
Mm. So corporate became fashionable again, I suppose.
Pardon?
Corporate became fashionable again, maybe. Although you'll tell me it was never unfashionable.
Well, look, I mean, clients are dealing with, all sorts of issues, right? That affect their businesses, whether it be, climate change, disinformation, racial inequality, naturally, whether you're employees or your broader stakeholder base, they're expecting the companies, as we've talked a lot about, right? They're expecting companies to step up and have a voice on these issues. So that has created a lot of opportunity for agencies to weigh in and provide some perspective. Of course, we have the benefit in the agency environment of looking, having a lens into how so many different companies are tackling these issues.
Sure. But this year, perhaps you've seen a consumer recovery as well.
Without a doubt, companies in most of our businesses around the world, we've seen a pretty dramatic recovery. I think one of the things that's interesting, you asked about client expectations. I was having a conversation yesterday with CCO of one of the leading companies in the world, multinationals. And I was asking her a little bit about that question, how do you see, your role and how is it, what are your expectations relative to agency partnerships? And one of the things she shared was how there's always going to be a focus on big moments, right? Because that can drive a business and in a variety of different ways. But she said that what was striking to her and is really important to her and resonates with her is just how, and I'm sure this is true very in a broad sense, how close the partnerships have become and how it's more about the day in and day out support. Like we're all kind of going through this together, right? And how, so it's an extension of the team, and how valuable that is to have that outside perspective, not just with the big moments, but day in and day out. And so, and I've seen that, when I look at our client retention across our businesses, it's never been higher. And, that tells you a lot about how our client partners are thinking about agency relationships and support these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let's talk about growth coming out of 2021. Obviously, IPG DXTRA is an acquirer of firms. If you were looking to spend money on a business or invest in certain areas, where would you be more bullish, whether that's geographic or sectoral or in terms of practice areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our philosophy, we always want to be opportunistic. We're always looking for, interesting ways to bring in capabilities that are additive, that, are going to bring new dimension to the solutions we bring to clients. I think that more often than not, that's going to relate to particular kind of expertise. It could be within a sector or just more generally. I think it's a little less about geography for us, only because we have the footprint, a well-developed footprint around the world already. So I think it's when we look at opportunities out there, it's just how do we bring more dimension? How do we deepen our expertise in areas where our clients are focused? And those are the some of the filters we use as we kind of think about how to continue grow the business. Naturally, our biggest focus is on our clients and growing the business organically.
There's been quite a lot of acquisition this year. Do you expect IPG DXTRA to be active in terms of acquisitions? Is it something you're actively pursuing, or do you think now is not the right time?
Well, I think, again, we're always looking to be opportunistic, always have eyes open, ear to the ground, just trying to consider all the different possibilities. But, our first primary focus is on, particularly at this time, is just making good decisions for our people and our clients and building our business organically. So, I think we have a well-developed business at this point in our different organizations. So, I think we'll always look at acquisitions as part of our strategy, but it's not going to be at the top of the list just because I think we have a strong bench of talent and strong capabilities in key areas.
Mm. One of the big trends we've seen over the last few years, and it's persisted through the last 18 months, is consolidation of agencies at holding groups, not necessarily to the same extent at IPG, but it has happened to some extent at IPG too. Do you expect that to persist? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you see the benefits of individual brands versus maybe a more consolidated structure.
Well, when you look at IPG today, or even its guiding philosophy and operating approach over the last number of years, and I think it's differentiating, it's about the power of the brands. It's my strong view that great talent comes to work for brands, right? And are attracted to going back to the conversation we had earlier about culture, right? That's what fuels our business and attracts, the best talent. So that's certainly not going to change, right? That, we believe in the power of the brands. We believe we have best in class brands in these different areas of expertise. So I don't anticipate any, to your question, any consolidation. I think we're going to continue to go to market, as Weber Shandwick, as Golan, as Future Brand, as Jack Morton, as Octagon, as all of our 27 brands in the portfolio. That is a powerful way to go, and that's the approach we're going to continue to take.
We've seen more MBOs, more management buyouts of firms at holding groups, including a few at IPG, at Weber, and elsewhere in the portfolio. Is that a pattern, do you think? Is that something we're going to see more of?
I don't think it's a pattern. I think it's, you always look at markets, and, when those things come up, it's pretty straightforward what the consideration is will our people be better off for whatever set of reasons, going that route. We have longstanding partnerships in those few instances where we've gone that route. We continue to have great relationships with those partners. We have track records serving clients with those partners. How we handle it from an internal accounting perspective, we go from a majority interest to a minority interest. I don't see any impact on our client service model, and it seems to be a good opportunity in those few instances for our people. So that's not something, again, it's a case by case thing. It's not like it's something we're looking at more holistically.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say any of them have been, none of the MBOs we've seen, certainly at IPG, have been massively significant from a kind of financial reporting perspective, let's say. Right. But again, it's interesting that a recurring theme in your answers is to kind of do what's best for your people, which certainly does seem like a pattern. And it kind of brings us full circle, I suppose, because I wanted to talk to you about some of these social movements we've been seeing in different places around the world, but to a very large extent in the US as well, in terms of Black Lives Matter. And it's driven a much greater awareness of the importance of diversity and inclusion, as you know only too well. public relations industry doesn't have a great record, let's say, when it comes to D&I. How do you see that movement for change playing out in the US? First of all, let's talk about that, and then I'll ask you about how you see it playing out internationally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that certainly, in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd in the United States, it certainly catalyzed the movement in a very positive way, in terms of raising people's consciousness, getting people focused on these issues as a high, very, very high priority. In our organizations, you saw that one of the first places to go there is to be sure you're acknowledging the reality as it is, and so to be transparent about what the state of the business is, what your representation looks like, making a commitment in a very specific way to change that, bring more diversity to the leadership teams. But I do think that the most important thing is inclusion, right? And it's not this issue in our industry. The picture won't change unless we look at the underlying structures and systems and make sure we root out, understand what unconscious bias might be somehow affecting things. We have to change behaviors. We have to change our approaches, and I think we're making good progress on those fronts. But I think if you talk to as we do all the time, you listen to your employees. It's all about inclusion. You have to create an environment where you're almost re-recruiting your employees all the time, right? You want to make sure you've got their back. You're creating opportunity for them. You understand what their thought process is. What success looks like for them, not just what does success look like for our organization. And I think that is often rooted in inclusion. And I think that transcends the U.S. market. There's you look around the world, and there's naturally going to be different issues, different ethnicities, different conversations around this topic. But it's so critical for not just companies in our sector, but for all companies to focus on these issues as among their highest priorities. It's what attracts and retains the best talent. And so, it's certainly been a driving focus for our teams over the course of the year. But it can't be, if for us to be successful over the long term and truly change the picture, it can't be just an initiative or people trying to improve certain numbers. It's got to be a sustained effort, and you got to address the underlying systems and structures, and so you can really create change, meaningful change over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's hard work, and it has to happen every day. Are you seeing that push for change elsewhere in the world, though? It's not just limited to, let's say, the US and the UK and other Western markets. One of the things I hear sometimes here in Asia from leaders in this industry is that they don't need to worry about it. It's only a US issue. What's your response to that kind of an observation?
Well, look, it's not just a U.S. issue, right? And I think that when we do employee surveys or we do certain types of programs, D&I programs, the feedback we get around those is if it happens to be a U.S. centric program by design to spark a certain conversation, right? Maybe it was in the aftermath of George Floyd, whatever it might be. The feedback is always, what about us? Like, this matters to us. It maybe matters in a different way. Here's how, but how are we going to address those issues in this market? So I think it comes back down to people, right? It's a failure of leadership to say this issue does not affect us here. That's you can apply that to anything, of course, as a management principle. but it's certainly true in this arena as well. And I think our leadership teams around the world are highly sensitized to this. I know it's a big priority for our brand companies. It's a priority for me from an IPG DXTRA standpoint. It's a priority for IPG overall.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a failure of leadership to assume that you must be inclusive, just by design.
Yep.
It's, as you said before, something that agencies have to work at every day. So finally, Andy, last question for you. Are we seeing a shift, do you think, away from the kind of stereotype of the aggressive, personality-driven CEO towards something a little bit more empathetic? And is that perhaps something that's a little bit overdue?
I think that shift has been taking place for quite some time. What in the corporate sphere, the era of the celebrity CEO is, I think, long past. And I believe strongly that the most successful CEOs, whether it be, for a Fortune 500 company or within our business, are the folks that are, the empathetic leaders, the folks that are really have a finger on the pulse of their organization, and what are all their stakeholders care about, but what do their employees care about, and that's the formula for success, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's a great note on which to end. Andy, thank you so much for your time. It was a really interesting chat. I think we covered a lot of ground, and if there is a takeaway here, I think for people in the industry in India or anywhere, maybe people at the mid-level or people at senior levels, it is the importance of listening to your stakeholders, listening to your people, and putting them first. So thank you so much, Andy. The only thing else I want to say is that I really hope we can do this in person next time.
Yeah, for sure. I look forward to that very much. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, Arun, and nice to be in front of this terrific audience, and with SPECTRA in India. Doing it live would be way up my list on things I'd want to do. So let's hope to make that happen.
Yeah, next year, hopefully. Thank you.
All right. All the best.